Good morning, Baker 501 students. It is Sunday, January 14th, 2024. It is ridiculously cold outside, so here in the Midwest at least, and be careful if you go outside, because I just looked at the thermostat, and at least I'm in Missouri, it was negative 7 degrees. So these time of year, the cost or demand, I guess you would say, for natural gas and other heating elements goes up quite a bit, so I'm not looking forward to getting that gas bill a month from now from Squire. But you got to keep yourself warm, keep pipes from breaking. Don't want to have that, and do everything you can to protect yourself. So this week, rinse and repeat. You guys are doing a great job in the forum discussions. The interactive assignments. So just keep those up, and we're going to look at Chapter 4 and Chapter 21. Just a reminder, just stay on top of that research paper, because 2 weeks from now, you're going to be submitting a rough draft to me. That way I can give you feedback before it's finally due. So, and if you do have any questions on that, do email me. It's best to email me, and then I can give you some feedback. Or if you need to talk over the phone or via Zoom, I'm happy to do that. So, all right. So first, chapter 4 with the role of government. In no way are we a pure capitalist economy. We've definitely have what I would call a socialist capitalist economy, where we do have a lot of government intervention, and this chapter kind of talks about the growth of government. And that's a bit of political debate these days, too, about the size and role in government, especially intervention in markets. So a lot of times the government will get involved because of a market failure. That is, markets left on their own do not produce desired results in society. And just this past week, I can think of the door blowing off of the Boeing. Boeing is really struggling in their image and concerns about quality, and the CEO recognized this. But now it's a question, does the FAA probably have to get more involved in production process, where previously that was kind of left up to Boeing to self-regulate itself. But again, the FAA doesn't necessarily have all the resources, so it's a question of how are we going to make sure that our jets are safe, and these jets are becoming more and more technical. It's almost to the point like the jets we had in the 70s were safer because there was less technology in them, but there's more things that could potentially go wrong. And the trade-offs, just like your cars today too, because there's so many electronics in them, they break down more often, so it's kind of a question, do you put a warranty on the electronics? I know that's something they often ask you when you buy the car now these days, just because there's just so much potentially that can go wrong, and so you would insure against it. But when we think about goods, they can be both private. Like a private good is just a cheeseburger that you consume, but they're public goods such as natural parks. During the break, I got to go to the Smoky Mountains, got to enjoy those. I did pay like a $5 fee, but it's a public good. Police force, national defense are public goods. These kind of left on their own would probably not be produced if the government did not go in there and organize these goods. So we think about some externalities that may happen from the production of goods and services. Externalities can be either positive or negative. Now negative, the most common negative externality is pollution. We're having a hard time trying to figure that out, especially with climate change and pollution in the environment, and burning a lot of coal or natural gas in order to create electricity. Well, the byproducts is what you put in the air. The air quality goes down. It's not as good to breathe, and potential concern for long rise in global temperatures. So the question is, how does the government step in to correct these things? And that's where a lot of the debate is. But sometimes when the government intervenes in market, it can actually create a failure. So it doesn't do, although it has good intentions, it actually makes things worse off. One example would be minimum wage is a good example that the government would intervene. In Missouri, we raised it to $12.15. Now, as long as the equilibrium wage is well above the minimum wage, there's no issues. But let's say that Missouri decided the minimum wage should be $17 an hour, and the equilibrium wage is about $12.50. Well, you have many businesses that say, I can't afford this anymore. I may even have to shut down. And that's kind of when we get into Chapter 21 this week with cost. but it actually makes worse things. Although they have good intentions, it actually creates more unemployment. Okay. And another one today, too, especially is the concern about inequity among incomes or net worth in individuals. So how does the government intervene to try to reallocate resources to those that may not have as much? So that's also a lot of the political debate. And the implementation of taxes is the main way to transfer wealth or income from other individuals to those that have less. So chapter 21, you're going to look at the cost of production. This is also what I like to call the meat and potatoes of economics as we look through the market structures. But you're going to start off with the idea of a production function. The idea with production function is that if we keep other variables fixed and we add, say, one input and change that, such as labor, what would happen to the amount of output? Let's say that we all in our cohort worked in a donut factory and say that I meant really well, but I'm terrible and I make like one donut in an hour, and say Donnie comes in and then our production goes up to like 20 donuts. Well, the two of us together, the marginal change went from 1 donut to 20 donuts. So it was a change of 19. As I say, we had another worker, maybe it goes up to like 30 donuts, so the change is 10. So it went up, but it's increasing at a decreasing rate. And at some point, we may actually make it negative. Our production goes down, and then we have negative marginal changes. But we have this law of diminishing marginal returns, and that's saying in a given plant size and space, and as long as you have other variables constant, you just can't make the assumption you just keep on adding input and just expect output to go up. And that's another reason why our cost curves are going to be U-shaped, and these diminishing marginal curves kick in. So with this, you're going to look at the idea of total cost. So total cost is simply fixed cost plus variable cost. Fixed cost is going to be like a lease or some just startup costs that you have to pay every month in order to run the business. Even if you produce nothing, you're going to have some fixed cost, and those fixed costs will be constant. I like to use the idea of a lease of the space because you have to pay it regardless if you're operating the business or not. You signed up for that lease. Variable costs can be materials, labor, etc. But to find average total cost, average fixed cost, and average variable cost, and kind of like these U-shapes that you're going to see in these curves, we take total cost divided by quantity produced, fixed cost divided by quantity produced, and variable cost divided by quantity produced. And the thing about average fixed cost, it's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. We like to call this spreading of overhead cost. It's never going to touch that horizontal axis, but it's getting closer and closer to it. And what you'll notice too is the difference between these average variable cost and average variable cost and average total cost. They're going to get closer and closer together because the difference between them is average fixed cost. But we can have some firms experience economies of scale, and that is, as we get larger, we can actually lower those average total costs, which can help with the profit. And actually, in the United States, I would argue that we're seeing more and more firms consolidate in order to experience lower average total costs. I was in the banking many years ago. There used to be over 20,000 banks in the United States. That number has dropped dramatically, especially after 1997 when the interstate banking law changed and allowed more firms to merge together across state lines. So you have to remember, like the United States is unique, like Europe and other places, they don't have that many banks. But they can lower their costs by sharing all the resources, especially the technology, which is very expensive today. Even if you have small town banks, sometimes they have to partner with other banks because the technology costs are just so high. So with that, you can also have diseconomies of scale. And I'll use an example of like Budweiser in the United States. If they were to produce all the beer in St. Louis, it would be very expensive. Think about delivery costs to get the beer everywhere. So they're very strategic about having different plants, distribution systems throughout the United States to keep those costs at a minimum. So, all right, so those are some major highlights for the week for the chapters and things that you'll read. But again, looking forward to the forum discussion. Good job with that. Make sure, I'd really like to see some video posts. I want to see you all, get to know you all. But if you can, jump in there and do a video. I want you to kind of practice different mediums because I think that's just how we're moving going forward and how we communicate in the business environment. But otherwise, have a great week, and I will talk to you online. Take care.